Well, Pete, it's the year that was, it's the year that's happened, and it's the year that we probably all want to put behind us. Some of us have done reasonably well throughout the period by just keeping our heads down and working hard and not too worrying about too much. But the world around us is, well, let's just face it, chaos rules.
Yes.
Where to from here? Well, and before we go to the where to 2021 forecast and look forward, let's look back and say, hey, what happened this year? How did we fare? And what were the key signals that we think are going to drive activity in 2021?
Well, good morning, Will. When you look back on the vision mirror, it's been a pretty wild 11 and a half months. We're nearly there. We're 2 weeks away from the end of New Year's Eve, December 31. I'm not sure what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, but I know what's happened in the last 50 weeks, and it's been chaos. If you're looking at the markets, you're looking at what's happened across the big themes, stimulus-led rallies to the Dow closing at an all-time high this morning. The US dollar index hitting a high of 103, now in the 89s. Imagine that, US dollar, 13% wipeout. Gold all over the shop, oil back over 50 for Brent. And that's, I think, a positive tone. And then you're looking at what's going on as far as China and infrastructure, crude, iron ore prices, coal, sanctions. Yeah,
it's been a year. I mean, there was probably no ingredient of this global recipe that wasn't actually added to this cake, was it? I mean, we've stirred it. I mean, it's not like the typical Christmas pudding. You know, we're relaxing this time of year, thinking about how it's all going to play out. Take a couple of days downtime. But as a trader right now, would you be seriously thinking about taking some time off, or would you be sitting on your desk, actually waiting to see what that next breaking news cycle, or breaking piece of news in the next cycle would be? Well, or does it matter?
I don't know whether it does matter, because from a trading perspective, the retail traders have been all over it. They've had big moves and monstrous moves with that US dollar.
And a lot of people have done very well out of it.
Incredible year for traders.
Huge volatility in markets means a lot of opportunity to be in and out, right?
Yes, absolutely. Look at the euro, now at nearly over 122. Have a look at the yen, closing in on 100 versus 100 yen versus 100 cents US, currently at that 103, 104 sort of level. Look at the Aussie dollar, 76 cents, wild ride. Have a look at our equities, have a look at the Dow, as I mentioned, all-time high today. So these are incredible numbers. The stimulus, what the US is prepared to do. Japan, what are they prepared to do as far as stimulus? Climbing COVID numbers affecting Japan. The all-time high numbers yesterday for, I believe, the US. I haven't seen the number, but I've heard that it's an all-time high, so it's got to be over 280,000 for the day. We've gone into a state of, I think, I'm not sure what you rate Sydney as far as in the last 12 hours, COVID numbers back up at 17 and the northern beaches, which could cripple certainly the city, and great effect to, family visits.
Cross-border family visits look
Absolutely.
Like they're going to, perhaps being rethought. People are thinking through whether they actually go to Queensland,
or
go
whether
to Victoria,
they're allowed to
travel
go
to Western Australia. Can they go? Can they get back in?
Exactly. There's the other part. So yeah, it's a lot of unknowns at the moment, and if you can look forward and say how 21's going to be, I'm not sure.
Let's hold that thought and go to there in a minute. But what we do know is what happened in 20.
Yeah.
And as we sit here today and talk some of the themes that you've just touched on, gold. Gold was a big story the first half of the year. The rise and rise of gold.
Through the stimulus coming in, we had nearly at all-time highs. Then you had the talk: are we going to get a vaccine? And that really pulled all of that hot air out of gold. Came down crashing. Couple of $100, and now it's rallied back up.
Iron ore replaced it. Iron ore slid, sort of stepped up, and
what an incredible trade, and great for Australia. I mean, we've played so handsomely into that because of high prices and huge demand. So that's been a win. It hasn't been a win for a lot of those other commodities. China's really affected us greatly with seafood, as far as lobsters, red wine. I believe the grains have been hit hard. Certainly coal. There was talk of 60 ships off the coast of China.
They were pleased during the week, I think, from some of the sailors. It's guys, we're stuck here. We want to go home. Let us off the ships. I mean, look, it's not just the commodity. I mean, there's people sitting on some of these platforms, some of these, just sitting here going, well, when?
Yeah, exactly. So there's that side of it, the human cost. As far as the financial cost, where are we? Unemployment numbers. Certainly a lot of businesses have done well this year, there's no doubt. A lot of businesses have it's been absolute carnage. And, government stimulus, are we going to see? And I think looking here in what I'm seeing ahead, we're talking about stimulus today, but I'm sure there'll be another round in February or March. Certainly.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. And what's the story now? I'm seeing that, just hearing headlines, there's as far as allergic reactions to some of these vaccines.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, Australia was a key player in the race for the vaccine. We had some government activity with backing some of the big players, CSL, and some of the research laboratories at various universities committing time and effort to get there. And sadly for them, they didn't quite make it. And but we've seen in the US a couple of the big guys. Pfizer's picked up it.
Yep.
Certainly leapt forward in that program and delivery. And there are others, I'm sure, contributing. But we step back from that and we look at the contribution idea. Have we seen this level of global scientific contribution to the advancement of a common goal? Have we ever been able to do that?
They galvanised. From the pharmaceutical and government, galvanised to that was unheard of. They're saying it's 3 to 5 years. They've done it in really probably about 6 or 7 months, if not sooner.
So there's something to be said there if we talk about collaboration.
Wonderful.
And that's probably another big theme of this year. How did we pivot? How did we change to adapt to new normal to then continue to get business done, to continue to drive an economy, to even have a chance at being there to and be part of the recovery?
Sure. You put your mind back to the GFC, and I'm sure that when the central bankers looked at what happened in the States, as far as a case study, there was possibly, and I'm not being critical because I'm not involved in it, but I would say that there was we're sitting on our hands a little bit. I know they work tirelessly, 24 hours a day, the likes of Hank Paulson and all. You put your mind back to that whole Lehman Brothers, the meltdown and so on. The collective, this time round, the collective across every central banker was we're going, and we're going hard, and we're going now. Are you in? And that would have been G20, and it would have been a brave central banker. You would have been, riding your own death knell if you didn't participate. And everyone was, how much? Go. We're doing it today. We're all on board. And I've never seen action like that. It was like a military operation. So that's collectively across the first world. And here we are today, looking back. It's been an incredible ride because have a look at equities. It's been a great time for markets and for traders. And pension funds and all of those sort of things. So does 21 continue with record low interest rates? Who would have thought negative interest rates? And that frontier leading forward over the next 12 to 18, 24 months is very much an unknown. New. Does Brexit get through? Is it a hard Brexit? What's happening there with Boris and the boys? It's still jury out. And then what's happening as far as the US? You've got the inauguration on the 20th of January. You hear some of the things happening. I'm not talking from political front, but just the uncertainty across some of those frames as well. So it's there's a lot of murky water to get through before we actually see some clear, the bottom of the pool.
No periscope up. No periscope up yet, Pete.
Well, I think in some ways, Will, I don't know if the submarine's upside down. We don't even know that yet. So we've got to get through that murky water to be able to see what the next 12 to 18 months looks like. And I saw only in the last matter of hours the Swedish king coming out and saying we got it wrong. So there's just another.
That's a good point. Let's talk about leadership for a minute. To actually step up and say I got it wrong is a big issue. It's a big thing, and it needs to be something to canvass because again, probably one of the big trends coming through this year was one of leadership. Who are our leaders? Will we follow them? What are they doing to create an opportunity to survive for that team or that group or that organisation? How are they mitigating and managing risk? There's a governance theme there, which interestingly enough has surfaced here as a by nature of the fact that perhaps we all need to rethink that those definitions of what those concepts actually mean for us.
Of course.
But if you look at it all, big themes, big action, event-driven activity. Momentum.
Well, momentum to a trader's perspective, and if I roll that back across from traders want to see movement. And it certainly has shown that it's just been incredible movement. And you can be in for short periods of time or longer. You can be in for days, weeks, or months. But those big undercurrents are just, if you're looking at a chart, where's the US dollar gone since April? Well, it was at 103 sort of number. Now it's at 89. Wow. I just stayed short. What did you do with the Dow? Well, I believed in the stimulus package and I thought there'd be a V-shaped recovery and I rode the Dow from X to 30,000. I'm still long. So there's been a chance if you didn't dial up crazy leverage, there's been really exciting times to be trading in the market. Gold, oil. Well, we're at $50. I mean, hello. We had minus $38. I think that was April or May. Minus 38. So there's a movement. You go, well, what was the low for the year, Pete? Oh, minus 38.
Mate, it sounds like we're talking about Christmas temperatures in Canada.
Yeah, you've never been
38.
You've never been minus before in your life. You've now gone minus 38. What are you today? 50. In 8 months, we've had an $88 range. That's unheard of. So all of these little points, and that's why I wanted to build on that reflection of what we looked at in the past. The future is always unknown. But I tell you what, it's there's a lot of moving parts to what goes on to the next 6 to 12 months.
Well, here's a left field question for you. I mean, we look at markets, we look at trades, we look at graphs.
We live it.
We live it, right? And so when we think about data sources, I mean, and you think about disparate data sources, what are you thinking around? I mean, what is a source of data that you could look at that ultimately can give you a nice starting point to go, okay, cool. Here's a baseline for what I'm about to say. I mean, is it shipping movements? Is it ports? Is it container movements? Is it Bitcoin? Is it blockchain? Is it?
You know what I think it is?
What is it, Pete?
Stimulus. I think.
Because I'll come back to commodities for a minute because we're talking about sentiment drivers that actually also go to.
Of course, well, they're consumption,
stimulus, right?
Sure, and infrastructure, go and build the world.
Right.
I saw something on TV yesterday. It was interesting. It was Myanmar, and they've got cranes and they've always had cranes, but they're going through a huge building cycle because infrastructure. And I feel across Asia is going to be China's leading the way on that, and they've been building for decades. But that whole frame of that rebirthing of it's tired, it's old, we need a new one. And this is where you get to that infrastructure, those base metals, huge consumption as far as the likes of copper and all of that going into the melting pot, but the consumption patterns, new highways, new cars, we're going to
roads,
electric
airports,
vehicles.
train lines, bridges.
Yeah, we all need steel. So what happens? So those ingredients go into the consumption, but it's the consumption. I think this is what the world's getting to. Always the talk, the super cycle's coming to a bit of a holiday and we're at 2018, maybe the super cycle's over. I may have taken a break, but it's certainly not over from the demand picture. And I feel that 7.5 billion people, that's growing to 9 billion by 2040. So we've got 20 years of huge growth, but an extra 1.8, 1.9 billion people to feed. The consumption of that, food, water, electricity consumption.
All right. So you're talking security concerns, you're talking consumption concerns, we're talking
geopolitical.
We're talking geopolitical concerns.
Just a thought. Who would have thought this? I've got to say, from a geopolitical theme, who would have thought that Israel would now be joined at the hip with Saudi Arabia and the UAE? I did a talk the other day with Gulf Intelligence, and they were talking about the Israelis coming to Dubai. We can get a plane from Dubai to Tel Aviv. I mean, you used to have to go nearly around the world, figuratively, to get there. Now,
direct
flights and geopolitical. So I've seen.
So what's there? I mean, this isn't a COVID story here. This is a geopolitical. This is a geopolitical situation. It's come about why?
It's come about why? Because I think there's been peace and a sense of breaking of the bread and trying to be less geopolitical tensions.
Have we drawn a line and decided we need to be part of the global citizenry as opposed to just sitting out on the left?
You mean Australia
or Israel, or the US, or China?
Well, the US has brokered the deal and they've cemented that. But we've also got those talks. In recent weeks, you had that the nuclear scientist out of Iran. We had Soleimani earlier in the year. There's been no pushback on either of those from what we're seeing as far as oil being.
You're talking demonstrations of power, demonstrations of to some extent and reach, and you can talk about navies in that context and the growth of the various navies around the world. And you could talk about the downing of the Malaysian aircraft by the Russians. I mean,
yes.
So these aren't isolated incidents, are they?
No, they're not. They're geopolitical themes, or they're themes that can really.
So the security themes. I mean, we add cyber to that. We think about the interaction of cyber in Australia, ransomware. We think about the rise of new segments of markets that perhaps have always been there, but now there are they're becoming an industry.
Yes, they are, and presenting themselves with opportunities from trading, and the other side, what it does to e-commerce. Where does everything seems to be done off an iPhone. So that whole integration as far as people's experiences and trading, well, it's all there. Just, there's the market for you.
You wind that back a little bit, and I recall an RBA presentation some years ago in Canberra where they were speaking about identity, identity and payment, and everything else looking at that comes from that. We bring it back to identity and payment, and there we have the, if you like, the single-minded proposition of a lot of, perhaps the new platforms that you Afterpay, your tech-led.
Yes, and know your client. So that's so important as far as know the customer. That legal-wise, anti-money laundering, all of those frameworks that sit above that. From criminal enterprises, so you've got to make sure that you get it right. And know your client is such a KYC is just a huge.
Another big theme that's come through from over the last couple of years, certainly here in Australia and no doubt around the world. But so big themes. We're talking health, we're talking tech, we're talking food. Yeah. We've spoken about resources. We're looking at transportation, logistics, infrastructure.
Well, transportation and logistics run you through to the vaccine. How quickly, this is where it's going to be an interesting test case in a month and a half's time to look at the effectiveness from a rollout strategy for the likes of Pfizer, to get those vaccines into someone's arm somewhere in America. That rollout, what's Europe going to do? So it's such an interesting lens to look through. All of this is, and we're talking now, it's game on now. So, in 6 weeks' time, we're sitting here in the start of February. How has that last 6 weeks looked? What's happened? Oh, what are the big groundbreak? We didn't see that coming. What happened? So that's where I look at the effectiveness. We should have Brexit over the line by then. All of those themes rolling over the next 6 weeks are going to be fascinating from a trading perspective. What impact it has to markets. I feel, and I've just maybe it's in the water they say, but we've had 11 and a half months. Is the next 2 weeks going to be nice and cool, calm and collected? We're putting the banana chairs out. We're having a bit of a rest. It's just the world's sorted itself out, or is the tension going to be dialed up tremendously over the next matter of weeks? I'm not sure. I'm
not sure either, Pete. But if we have a question to leave, if that's a position to sort of wrap up on, that's the position. The what now, what next? Well, we know the what now. It's happened.
Yes.
We've spoken about that plenty of times this year, and I think we've canvassed that pretty well. There's opportunity everywhere.
Yes.
But we have to really look a lot harder today to really find it in order to find the positions that will actually work for us in the short, medium, and longer term. The what next could be anything. Infrastructure, resources, tech, healthcare.
Got to be healthcare.
Got to be healthcare. Supply chain, logistics. I mean, and hopefully, we end up in a situation where we've taken a lot of learnings out of this year. We've obviously been disrupted.
Yes.
We've had to change. People have
be
had
adaptive, to pivot, resilience, all of those frameworks built in.
That's right. And looking forward, I guess those that capitalise on those initiatives, may well find that there's new organisations, opportunities, and scenarios through which they can build enterprise around.
Absolutely. So with that, I'd like to thank Boardroom Media for everything this year. It's been a great year. And let's see where 21, I'm looking forward to the ride. I'm strapping myself in because I think it's going to be a very interesting ride. The opportunities are there. You've just got to, don't go asleep at the wheel. If you're a trader.
Information, insight, activity, and one of the things you've always said to me, mate, make sure you take some time out and create a gap in your day to rest, because you don't make good decisions.
Well, those 3 points that Schwarzenegger, the top 3 out of the 10, really resonate with me, and that'll come out in the next week or so. But the Schwarzenegger was lift weights. In other words, move your body. In other words, work hard. There's the first part. So, don't be lazy. You've got someone up there gave you a body, look after it. The second one, sleep well. So that's a big point as far as traders. You've really got to rest that from a cognitive standpoint, rest the body and rest the mind. Many traders get up and, they might at 3 o'clock in the morning, they've been asleep. Oh, what's happening? A dysfunction for your cortisol levels, your sleep patterns, and eat well. That's a big thing as well. Really look after it, because it's pointless. Let me tell you, it's pointless having all the money and this is in no use. It's burnt out, it's a wreck, versus getting it in tip-top shape and making sure that you can enjoy the success of your labours. And that's, to a lot of traders, it can be a first job or a second job or a third job. And if it comes up the curve and you're good at it, it can be your primary source of income. And they're the opportunities.
Well, Pete, be kind, be happy, be healthy. Merry Christmas and all the best, mate. We'll see you in the new year.
God bless. Take care.